What is state sovereignty? According to international law, state sovereignty is the ultimate power of a state over its people and territory, which involves the full freedom of public power that indicates the state's supremacy. There are four characteristics of sovereign state. The first one is defined territory, which is internationally recognized space or area. Secondly, permanent population, which is people who are permanently living there. State independence means that it selects its own government and controls its own affairs. Remember, states that have export leaders or have laws imposed on them by a foreign force are not completely sovereign. Lastly, national and international organizations, the ability to establish relations with other sovereign states. These are the examples of sovereign state in Southeast Asia. Why is state sovereignty important to international law? The sovereignty is the most exclusive element of state, which gives the idea that all states are equal and have the same function as a state. So one state has no authority or power to meddle in the internal affairs of another state, because all states are equal in the aspect of international law. This means that a balance between the need of international relations and the aim of states to maintain their sovereignty to the fullest has been achieved.
International proceedings are frequently used to settle disputes about title to land territory, including islands and the precise determinations of boundaries. Arbitrations, used as a part of larger peace agreement. National sentiment, exploitation of previously believed barren or inaccessible area, strategic importance of previously forgotten place, and population strain on resources all suggest that territorial dispute will continue to be prominent. 5 methods of acquiring lands: occupations, descriptions, cessions, equestrian, and conquest. Occupations and prescriptions both are essentially concerned with impactful possessions, and while time is a factor in prescriptions, it is mostly concerned with control effectiveness. Occupation, the exercise of territory over previously unclaimed territory, typically by discovery or terra nullius. Prescriptions, the peaceful exercise of sovereignty for a fair period of time without opposition from another state. On June 12, 1953, the Colonial Secretary of Singapore wrote to the British advisor to the Sultan of Johor that he was directed to ask for information about the rock some 40 miles from Singapore, known as Pedra Branca, in the context of the determinations of boundaries of the colony's territorial waters. The acting State Secretary of Johor replied that the Johor government did not claim ownership of Pedra Branca. After issuing a letter saying that Johor did not own Pulau Batu Putih, the Johor Secretariat Authority failed to establish effective control over the island. Following that, the certificate document was considered a declaration that Johor was no longer seeking to preserve its sovereignty in the jurisdictions of Pulau Batu Putih. The 1953 letter from Johor answered a completely different question from the one asked by Singapore, merely stating that the Johor government does not claim ownership of Pedra Branca. Paragraph 222 of the judgment acknowledged that ownership is in principle distinct from sovereignty, but that in international litigations, ownership over territory has sometimes been used as equivalent to sovereignty.
What is jurisdiction? Jurisdiction is usually described as being either prescriptive or enforcement in nature. First, prescriptive jurisdiction. A state's ability to define its own laws in respect of any matters it chooses. Second, enforcement jurisdiction, unlimited, and a state may legislate for any matter irrespective of where the event occurs or nationality of the person involved. Extraterritorial jurisdiction is the situation when a state extends its legal power beyond its territorial boundaries. For example, a state maintains jurisdiction over its citizens when they are overseas and where certain criminal offences can be prosecuted in a state regardless of where they were committed. The court has recognized in its case law that as an exception to the principle of territoriality, a contracting state's jurisdiction under Article 1 may extend to acts of its authorities which produce effects outside its own territory. The between diplomatic agent and consular agent may amount to an exercise of jurisdiction when these agents exert authority and control over others. The court has emphasized that where the territory of one convention state is occupied by the armed forces of another, the occupying state should in principle be held accountable under the Convention for breaches of human rights within the occupied territory. Since the death occurred during a United Kingdom security operation, there was a jurisdictional link between the United Kingdom and these decades also.
Under international law, a state is subject to limitation on three categories. First is jurisdiction to prescribe. This is to make its law applicable to the activities, relation, or status of person or the interest of person in things. Second is jurisdiction to adjudicate. This is to subject person or things to the process of its courts or administrative tribunal. The last one is jurisdiction to enforce. This is to induce or compel compliance or to punish non-compliance with its laws or regulations. In a 6-3 decision, Alvarez was arrested as the court claimed that agreement between countries did not stop the accused trial from being in the United States. The Supreme Court ruled that the kidnapping was legal because criminal defendants that are being tried have to be in court regardless how the authorities get them. Hence, United States was not liable of violating the international law of the nation. The court's view, alleged violation of international law by the US were for the executive alone. Dr. Alvarez Macan was eventually acquitted by a US court and returned to Mexico as the decision of whether respondent should be returned to Mexico as a matter outside of the treaty. Instead, it is a matter for the executive branch. We conclude, however, that respondent's abduction was not in violation of the extradition treaty between the United States and Mexico. The fact of respondent's forcible abduction does not therefore prohibit his trial in a court in the United States for violence of the criminal law of the United States.